How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk Live. This is going to be fun. We're going to answer your questions as they come our way. We don't really have a topic. We'll see what topics are coming our way through the questions that are asked. My guest today, who's going to help us answer some of those questions, is the infamous and famous Russ Hamilton. Russ Hamilton will be on the show. He's the founder of Keepers of Chaos on Facebook. But before we go into our live, let me just go ahead and go over our sponsors real quick. First, we have American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree to seek higher education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So if you guys, again, looking for that degree, you want to bring experience into the classroom, please check out American Military University. We also have, hold on, let me get the phones going off all of a sudden. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That book is available. It's on the market. Link to that is in the description. It's doing very well, sells on Amazon, and is used for training all across the country. And we also have, hold on, a little off of my timing. Jesus. Let me just get rid of that. We also have How to Succeed in Corrections. It's a great book, guys. It's doing very well as well. It is on Blue 360 Media. And guys, this book's got tons of tips. I also just finished my book with rookies that is now going through the publisher as well. That book will complement that. But if you want that book, this book right here, right now, it's like a journal type format. You could find that link also in our description. And again, guys, this book just feels good to hold. There's just tons of advice. And then we have the rookie book coming out shortly, which will even add a little more. So let me get Russ on. Russ, stop eating, man. You're live. You're live.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
That's all right.
I didn't hear the cue, but I'm starved, man. I've been at work all day, got home, DoorDash. Now my dog keeps trying to pick off my fries or whatever, but I'm having more success against him than he is me. So,
well, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Of course. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Also, I have experience a few years in the juvenile correctional system. Currently, I also happen to work for a private company where we do re-entry and rehabilitation work at a local probation department and a local county jail, where I am the case manager. And that about wraps it up for me.
Yeah, that was a quick intro. And Keepers of Chaos is going good, Russ?
So yeah, Keepers of Chaos. I forget how many years ago I founded it. Now we're coming up on 6,000 members, though, which is great. It's really, just for anyone that is in the profession, whether you're sworn or custody or not, you can come in there and, we have a great group of people that you can get, knowledge, wisdom, learning, and advice from at any time, day or night. And we really emphasize the whole professions thing. We're not there to post funny memes, although that does happen from time to time. We're not there to just, bitch about things and never come up with solutions. We are solution oriented, and, we just have, a great bunch of people there. And like I say, we're closing in on 6,000 and even more, hopefully, by the end of next year.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, so hello to Coach Lou. Hello to Deco Painter and T. And then hello to It's My Life and congratulations. Hello, Anthony, starting the Academy in Michigan in October 16th. A little intimidated. Can't wait to read the books. Yes, I think the books. We got Joe Pompano on too. Hey, we should squeeze him in. I should maybe send him an invite real quick. Hold on one second, guys.
Send Joe an invite, man.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Hold on. Let me see.
Why should we have to carry this show? We could have Joe come in and carry it for us.
Yeah, I just sent it to him. Joe, I sent you an invite. Hey, It's My Life. If you have any questions, let us know. And I get the I don't know if intimidated is the right word. I mean, maybe a little
intimidated
anxious.
is the right word. It's absolutely the right word.
I don't know. I think it's more.
I was very intimidated when I started.
I think it's more anxious because you don't know what's to come, but maybe we can give you an idea of what it is that you'll be facing. If you have any questions that you would like to ask us specifically, this is the time to do it. October 16th is right around the corner. Wait, hold on. Look who just popped in from Texas. Oh, wait, hold on. Before we put him on, I don't think he realizes it. He's not dressed. He just got out of the jacuzzi. So hold on. Let me just. Oh, Joe, that's highly inappropriate, but I'm going to put you on anyway. What's up, Joe?
Damn, caught me with one arm in my shirt.
Hey, Joe. So we have It's My Life is getting ready to go to the Academy on the 16th, and let's see. And she says that I think it's a she. She says she's afraid of failing. I mean, so we could start off by giving her advice. And I just want to also say to Deco Painter and T, they usually see us on duty, Ron. Thanks for the great advice. Thank you for being a part of our community as well. If you have any questions, please ask us. I mean, we're more willing to answer any questions, even from the outside. But again, thank you for coming on coming by the channel, stopping by. It means more to us than you'll ever know. Oh, her name is Jamie. Okay, Jamie. So let's see if we can help you out here, Jamie. We'll devote some time to you right now because again, it is very tough to get ready to enter the academy. I know Russ said Russ agrees with the intimidation. I agree too. I think there's a lot of anxiety as well. But let's go over what we felt when we were getting ready to face the unknown. So Russ, let's go back to 1962 when you started. No,
you're hilarious. You're hilarious.
No, Russ, how did you feel? You got ready to start the California Department of Corrections. You got ready to go in the academy. Did you was there an academy, or did you start the job first and then was sent to the academy?
Oh, there was an academy. I went through the very last of the paramilitary academy where they come in and buzz cut your head and do all of that crazy stuff. But when I first got in, I was getting ready to go to San Quentin State Prison, and so what they offered me is they offered me a tour of the facility, and I'll never forget on that tour we walked into. Hold on.
Oh, I zoomed in right when you went to go take that drink. That timing was perfect.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Is that McDonald's?
It's McDonald's, man. I'd tell you, DoorDash today.
Oh my God.
But anyway, I went on this tour, and it was at San Quentin, and I was going into Alpine section, and they just had this stairs that came down there, and holy smokes, there was this guy, this inmate, dressed, just in white boxers, with his hands cuffed behind his back, and they're bringing him down. He had done something up there, and he was just a monster. He was twice as big as me. And then you look down the tier, and there was just it's 5 tiers, and it was just Niagara Falls with all of this water splashing over the top and running down 5 things. And every now and then these little rafts of burning material would come down over it. And officers were down there walking around in ankle deep water. And there was just, toilet paper that was burning and floating on top of the water and everything else. And all I could think of was, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And, a few short months later after that, I mean, it just seemed pretty normal to me to walk into a housing unit and, be cuffing up people twice as big as me and watching, just streams of water shooting over the 5 tiers and, the occasional fight, the occasional riot, things going on and off. And, that fear and intimidation, it gets replaced, not totally, but it changes because you're starting to evaluate it rather than just simply fear it. You're trying to, make judgments about what's going on with the inmate that you're talking to, what's going on with the group that's out on the yard. And pretty soon you're in there and you're functioning. You're a full size and weight correctional officer. And you know what? With all of the training and everything else, it takes a while, but it doesn't take you too long to start to actually get your feet. I will say it probably took me about a year to where I started to feel comfortable, not complacent, but comfortable in what I was doing. Because you should never be complacent. You should always feel like you do know what you're doing, but that you do have a level of control, and that you know what to do, especially in case of an emergency.
Yeah, and guys, I have a book coming out. It's in the publishing right now. It's going to complement this book here about corrections, how to succeed, and I added some more passages. This one has a lot. This has about 159, but I wanted to do something for the rookies, but not be repetitive. And for the rookies, it took me that for some reason it was easier to come up with 159 than this 39 because I didn't want to reiterate certain things. And one of the topics that I put was being ready versus being prepared. I think there's a difference. It's not something I really explored in my last book, but it's something I explored in this one. And I think it could go with Jamie, is that, listen, when you're getting ready to go to the academy and you're getting ready to face, I still feel there's that level of anxiety because you're walking into the unknown. You're not going to be ready, but you got to prepare yourself mentally to face the challenges ahead. And you're not looking to compete against anyone. You're looking just to improve yourself every day. You know, this is not about a win-loss. This is about constant growth and development. Because, listen, for some people, they're going to speed through the academy. For others, it could be a little bit more difficult. But I think what the academy look for is the effort. Is this person improving? Is this person moving in the right direction? For me, the academy is not so much a destination, but it's a potential to grow and be a second better every day. I mean, that's the key, you know. And again, Russ said it just before too, and just to feed off a little bit what he said, even going into the prison setting. I mean, you're never really ready. You just prepare yourself to be ready. Just to be able to take the things in emotionally. So if I could alleviate anything for you, and then we'll have Joe give some thoughts, is intimidating may be a tough word because, again, for some people that could be a scary word. So maybe what I would do is redefine that emotion. Don't look at the word intimidating. I mean, maybe there's another way that you can explain your feelings that may not be intimidating. I think it's maybe more anxious. I think it could be more anxious. I think because, again, you don't know what you're going into. And, but I will tell you this, though, and it's just maybe one last piece of advice. This is really a family type workplace. This is something that you're not meant to do alone. So if at any point you feel that, you have questions or concerns, especially, you always have this venue as well, try to connect to the people that are your recruits. You're all going through the same experience. You're not alone. And when I look back at my time in corrections, the best time, and I wish I knew it then, was the academy. That is the best time. Trust and believe that is the best time. I wish I knew it then when I was going through it. But when you're in the academy, just remember you're not the only one going through what you're going through, what you're thinking, all these other things that may be going in your head, maybe even some level of doubt, whatever it is. You're not the only one facing these unknown fears. So let's just start off by saying it's okay to feel the way you feel, but make sure in your efforts that you don't start putting too much doubt on yourself or start, second guessing your choices. Make sure whatever you do from this day forward, whatever thought process you have in your mind keeps pushing you forward, keeps moving you forward, because in the end, you got to get through it, and you want to have the right mindset. So again, don't look to be ready, because that could be an impossible expectation. Look to be prepared and look to be the best you can be. I don't care if someone else can do something in 9 minutes and you can only do it in 14 minutes. It doesn't matter. As long as the next day when you run again, you could do it at 13 minutes and 59 seconds. That's the key. Be the best you can be. What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, the word academy is an intimidating word all in itself. The biggest thing is, to be not so much expect the unexpected, but I mean, to be in that kind of mind frame. You're not going to be prepared for what's going to happen, and that's okay. Nobody else in that academy is either. That's why the academy is there. Your main focal point is self-betterment, self-progression, and to lean on your classmates. You know, because in the grand scheme of things, once the academy is done, you guys are going to be a team. And in order for that to happen, they have to look and find the weaknesses in everybody and build off of that. So when you go in there, you know, be in the mindset that, you know, you're going to be looked at as a person, you're going to be looked at as a cadet, and they're going to be looking for your strengths and your weaknesses. You know, whatever your weaknesses may be, your most important fact is to, or your most important point is to make yourself better, whether it's something physical, whether it's something in the classroom, whether it's something with defensive tactics, whether it's something with, you know, using the equipment. You know, the word academy in itself is an intimidating thing. You hear academy and everybody's like, oh shit, you know, here we go. I'm going to fail. Don't go in there with the mindset that you're going to fail. Go in with the mindset that you're going to be better than you was when you started the academy. That's the thing to remember. When you come out of this academy, you're going to be a better person. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to be a stricter. You're going to be a stronger individual than when you came in. And that's what the academy's for. It's there to find your weaknesses, what they call the break you down phase. It's there to build you up, to work on your weaknesses and endure your strengths. And it's also there to invoke teamwork and camaraderie. Because once you finish the academy and you go to your unit of assignment, you're there. You depend on your team, and your team depends on you.
Yeah, and Joe, you made a good point. I think a lot of people, when they go to the academy, they go in with the mindset they have to impress. And I think the instructors humble you when they see, yeah, you're great at doing these things, like especially the run. And yeah, sure, you got the fastest time, but look at the people behind you. You know, you got to help them, because at the end of the day, you become vulnerable when you're responding to a code alone. So I think that is another part for Jamie to realize, is that part of the academy, besides bettering yourself, is to make sure you're, you know, developing that bond with the people that are going to risk their lives for each other. You know, you have to kind of maintain that closeness. So there should be an effort for some level of, I would say, like some level of balanced vulnerability going in, not to impress, but being the best you can be. And then if you have strengths that can complement someone else's weaknesses, and that's how you guys get through it. I mean, as I look back, I don't think the academy was an individualized effort. I think that the instructors, they push for some level of unity. They don't want you guys to kind of do this on your own. I mean, yeah, there's some individualized responsibilities, but for the most part, they want teamwork. They want motivation. They want people to be there together, cheering each other on and bringing each other to the finish line. So I think that's a good mindset to have too, Jamie. As we mentioned, it's just you're not in it alone. And when you get there, you know, try to see where your strengths are, and then you can help those people out who may not have your strengths, and vice versa. I've seen people that can do the physical but had trouble with the academics. So you know what? You help me prepare myself to run a mile and a half, and I'll help you study the laws of or the policies and procedures. I mean, it's just a great balance of, you know, each other's vulnerabilities. We have another good question. I want to get to Bonnie's, but I want to first get to Gregory James, and I'll start with Joe and then Russ. Is Gregory James says, just made sergeant a couple of months ago. What should I focus on? This is always a fun question. So we'll go with Joe first, then we'll go with Russ, and then we'll go to me.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations on making sergeant. If you made sergeant, then that means, you know, you got your head in the game already. The main thing you should be focusing on right now is your people. Find out where your strengths and your weaknesses are on your shift, and find a common ground to try to level and equal out those strengths and weaknesses. Train your people, give them the knowledge, be there to support them, and be there to listen to them. Those are the main things as a sergeant you should focus on. Promoting into sergeant is probably one of the hardest steps to make in the supervision chain. Being a lieutenant's easy because we've already been a sergeant. Being a sergeant, you're crossing the realm of the unknown. Now you're going from the correctional officer to the supervisory side. So now your whole mindset has to shift from being part of the pack to being that leader of the pack. So in order to lead effectively, You got to make sure that they're trained well, that they're secure in their job abilities and job duties. If they're not, then it's your job to teach them. It's your job to help them elevate themselves to another level and get above their weaknesses. Give them the knowledge. Don't sell them short answers. A lot of these CEOs nowadays are hungry for knowledge and have a thirst for knowledge. Make sure you explain the why as you're explaining the how. But give them the training that they need. Make sure you stay on top of them. As far as training wise, because I'm not saying practice makes perfect, but it damn sure helps.
I like that. And hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on? Let me get him back in. Russ, what's your thoughts on becoming a supervisor? And by the way, Jamie did say thank you, Anthony, Joe, and Russ. That helps a lot. PT is my biggest challenge for the academy. I'm older too. That plays a part. I really appreciate the time you guys gave me tonight. Solid advice. We appreciate that. And Jamie, if you have any questions along the way, you can email us, gangianthony@yahoo.com. And, we're more than happy to help you guide through the academy. Just email us, tell us what your questions are. And I could always forward it to Russ and Joe and just kind of keep you motivated as you go through. But before Russ answers the sergeant question, just as we said, remember, just stay this. It's going to be scary at first, a lot of unknowns, but eventually you get yourself with that routine. You just got to get past the first couple of days. I would say the first day, but just give yourself a couple of days. And eventually you'll get into the norm, the pressure of being yelled at, all that other stuff. And then eventually it's just more about self-growth. So take this as an opportunity to learn and grow. And I promise you, in your career, when you look back, this will probably be the best time of your career. So please, and this is advice most people may never have told you, but just trust me on this, find time to enjoy this process. Find time to enjoy this process because this is when it's safe to learn. Remember that. This is when it's safe to learn. So please, in the process of all the anxiety, all this other stuff you're going on, find time to take a breather and smile because you're going to need it. It's something I wish I would have enjoyed more when I was at the academy. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on the sergeant's question?
So, just going back to focus on especially what Joe had to say about training. Remember that, being a sergeant is about being a leader, right? And the way that you really accentuate those skills with leadership is by training your people. But once you train them, you have to allow them to put that training into practice for themselves. And by doing that, you'll allow them to mature and grow. And that will raise your stature in their eyes. And that's what you want. You want to be grooming them to take your place and to take the successive places beyond which maybe you're never intending to go. And so those are the kind of people that we want to pay attention to them, not just for leadership's sake, but for the sake of growing the profession in the right direction after that. So, the development of people is first and foremost. The second part of it, and maybe it's just equal, I don't know, is the command of those people over the situations that you're going to come across. There's going to be the day-to-day, and there's going to be that exigent circumstance that's going to crop up its ugly head. And if you have prepared them and they're ready to go and willing to go and get after it, that's what's going to make you a successful sergeant.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I know when I became a sergeant, you really don't know what you're stepping into sometimes because we think we understand what the position above us does until we actually get into that position and realize it's a lot more complicated than we could see on the floor right below it. So I would definitely go in learning. Don't give yourself these impossible expectations that, a supervisor must know all these things. I mean, to be honest with you, I like what Joe said before too, where your responsibility is towards your people. I mean, that's the case. I mean, when you go in, you have to realize that your concern is going to be your people. You got a voice for them. I mean, that's really you're the voice for your people. So I think a lot of the learning for me as a supervisor, because I kept myself open, came from my front line. I went in knowing that I did not know everything. I didn't hold myself to that impossibility of knowing everything because I'm going to tell you something right now, you just can't in corrections, especially the higher you go. I mean, everybody has their areas of expertise, but you're never going to know everything. So you got to kind of go in with that humble mindset and not that impossible expectation of, I got to know everything that I have to do I got to know everybody's job in order to supervise them. And no, that's not true. You have the hired experts who are paid to do their job. I mean, yes, you have to supervise them, but they are going to be the people that are going to be able to tell you, this is what they do, this is how they do it. And then again, your job is just to kind of keep them motivated, keep them inspired, and just try to do your best to just bring some value and appreciation to the work that they do. So I think that when you become a supervisor, it gives you a chance now at that higher level to really show some appreciation to the people that are doing the job, at least the ones that are directly beneath your position. So, and for me, becoming a sergeant was the toughest jump, because that's the first role into a supervisory position, and that's when you really start taking the responsibility of the people beneath you, of other people's work. So I learned that I provide a lot of effort into trying to do the right thing for my people, and once I build a trust with them, I don't always have to be successful in every outcome. As long as they see that I make the effort, we build that trust. So I would honestly also say that do that every day. Work to build the trust of your people. So at the end of the day, if you can't produce a certain outcome, they still trust in your effort. I mean, that's the key. And that, for me, that's in my book too, by the way. That's just something that has worked for me my whole entire career, because in the end, you may be giving the responsibility of a bigger area of control, but that doesn't mean your responsibility matches your authority. And sometimes people misunderstand that. They think that, because you have this position, you have this unlimited authority, and it's not the case. So I think as a supervisor, when I was able to discover more about the job and more about my responsibility as a sergeant, I also became very transparent with my efforts, letting people know that these are the things I'm trying. And if it doesn't work, can you please just give me the credit for trying? Because at the end of the day, if you're focused just on the outcome and you hold that at the highest priority, the problem is the people that commit to the effort wind up getting disenfranchised, because they're being judged sometimes by outcomes they can't produce. So I would just get yourself focused on just being that voice, providing that effort, and just building that trust with your people and being transparent with those efforts. And that was a great question, by the way. I love questions about supervisory. Hey, Joe, let me ask you a question real quick before we get to Bonnie's question. Did you, Joe, did you understand that question by Gray Craft where, hi, I have a very close friend who's a DO at HCSO here in Texas. My friend will make 3 years as a DO on the 10th. I'm new to watching Tier Talk. Is this community familiar with HCSO?
HCSO, I'm assuming maybe Harris County Sheriff's Office. Not quite sure what the DO stands for.
Detention officer.
Yeah, I think it's detention officer.
Okay. Yeah. Harris County is Harris County. It's one of the biggest counties in Texas. They got a huge facility. That's, unfortunately understaffed, just like a bunch of other facilities are. Harris County is having a tougher time than most right now because of their staffing shortages. I believe it was there that female sergeant was attacked, not too far back, and then there was another staff member there that was attacked too. So if you're working in Harris County, brother, my hat's off to you. That is a beast of a facility. I've been there, for warrant runs and stuff like that. The principles and the factors of the job are the same regardless of what facility you're at. Just be aware of your surroundings, man, and treat them all firm, fair, consistent, and treat them all like they're maximum custody. Because like I said, that's a pretty tough facility to be at.
Yeah, I like this question by Bonnie. How can we as a family support a loved one going through the academy? So I'm gonna go with Russ first on this one. Russ, what's your thoughts? And by the way, I love questions like this because corrections, when you work in corrections, there's a lot of sacrifice that have to be made. And that's going to happen as you progress in your career. Yes, you're going to miss certain holidays, certain events. I mean, I've been through it. I wasn't overwhelmed by it, but yeah, there were certain events I did miss along the way. So I think that when you have family at the get-go that shows support right from the academy, and then you're able to kind of, as you move to the profession, try to be able to translate the significance by the sacrifice about the sacrifices you're making, that you have that communication with your loved one because they know how important the job is. It does help out when you can't be there for certain events or just the sacrifices that made. So for when Bonnie asking about the academy, I think the connection that the family has with the sacrifices that the loved one is going to make does start at the academy, because that's when there's sacrifices being made there, especially you have to live there. So Russ, as a family member, how do you support a loved one? I mean, not even just going through the academy, but through this profession that requires you to commit sacrifices.
Yeah, it's a matter really of allowing that individual to be able to focus on what they focus on. And by that, I mean is, as things crop up, if it's in the academy or whatever, by letting them know, hey, you are handling the things that are going on at home, and they don't have to be concerned with that. You have to put out that extra effort for that individual for them to be able to get through that part in the academy to where they're not worried about, the broken pipe or, something that, is going wrong with the house or some issues with the kids at school. You want to be able to, lift that part of their responsibility off them for the duration of that period, because what they're going through is it's very stressful. At the academy, you never know what's going to crop up. It's stressful even more when you have to sit there and think about the particular environment that you're going to be going into. And for most people going in, this is their first go round with this type of thing. And so being able to let them deal with what they have to deal with and taking it off of them and making sure that you let them know, hey, we've got it handled. You're good to go. Concentrate on what you have to do. And other than that, I would say, send them some letters and things like that so that they can, stay and feel connected, because we had a 24 hour academy. So we were in the facility at the academy for the whole duration, except for 2 weekends, I think, for the whole time. And so that was very stressful too. Most academies these days, it's 8 hours. But anyway, just support them in that manner.
Yeah, and by the way, I went through the 24-hour academy. We lived there for 5 days and then went home on Friday, came back on Monday. We did that for about 4 or 5 months, something like that, or 4.5 months. I like what Russ said, and I want to piggyback on that, because this is also going to happen when, the person is in the job a little bit longer and they get mandated and they can't come home. You want your loved one to be focused in whatever objectives they have to complete, and you don't want to be a distraction, which means that the last thing you want to do is when that loved one, when that spouse or whoever it is has to make a sacrifice, because trust and believe they're probably feeling guilty already over it, but they have no control over, having to stay or not, let's say, or, having to go to academy 5 days to begin a career, 5 days a week to begin a career. The idea of making sure that you don't become a distraction for them by making them feel guilty and, over things they cannot control. To me, that's always, I haven't gone through that, by the way. I've always had a pretty good supportive system, but I have seen people go through it where they get mandated and it's like they're not so concerned about doing the extra 8 hours. They're prepared to do that. But what they're concerned about is having to call their loved one. And it just provides so much pressure to them that they just get extremely nervous. And then after the phone call, whoever it is on the other side is reaming them for having to stay, and it's not their fault. And then the person now is expected to go back and run a unit and be fully effective when their mind is really not in the moment. Their mind is unfortunately at home, and they're worried about getting home, and where's the break for them? They just worked 16 hours, let's say, and then when they get home, at the moment they get home, either their spouse cuts them off and doesn't speak to them, or they yell at them the moment they get in the door. So even like for the academy, yeah, it really is a safety issue. And as for the academy, there's going to be a sacrifice for them going in. So I think it's a good also initial understanding for you to understand that, hey, this is going to be part of the job. The sacrifices are going to be heavy at first, But they do lessen. They do. I mean, when it comes to time, I mean, it does lessen. Eventually, you get the good days off, but it could take years. I mean, I didn't start getting Monday through Fridays, 5 days a week, 8 to 4, until I became administration, and that was 12 years in my career. I pretty much had Wednesday, Thursday off, and I worked second shift. So I mean, it's just. It is what it is, but I love the fact, and I don't want to overlook what Bonnie did, and I'd love to get Joe's perspective is, I love the fact that Bonnie started by saying, how can we show support in the academy? Because in my mind, that person is prepared to go the distance, especially if they're willing to kind of, support you through that initial attempt, making sure that you succeed in the academy. Because now here's a good thing, by the way. If you are supportive to that person in the academy and you kind of go with them through the process, like mentally, physically, whatever it is, and you have some investment, then you're going to want them to succeed in the profession because you both have put in some level of investment towards it. So having said that, if the person has to make sacrifices, it's not easy, I get it, but you've invested in the initial attempt to get this person to be successful in the profession. So I think there's a partnership in that person's growth and development. Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who's going into the academy, their significant other or relative, husband, wife, whoever, is going into this, there's automatically that knowledge that, this person is sacrificing their time and their life to go into the academy because they want to make their lives better for their family by taking this job. So, at the onset of this thing, there should be clear communication between whether it's husband and wife, husband, if you have a brother or sister who's doing this, the best thing you could do is give them a lot of self-assurance, let them know that everything is going to be okay at the house. The academies, they differ from state to state. Like mine was 6 weeks straight and you didn't get to come home. You had to stay there in the bachelor officer's quarters the whole time. So, there are long periods of time, communication is very key. For the loved one of the person in the academy, be there to be that ear when you're lucky enough to actually get a phone call from them. Listen to them, let them vent, let them, get whatever self-doubt they have in them out, and just reassure them at every corner. It's tough because when one person's away, the rest of the family is at home left to deal with everything. And that's where, family structure and family support is key. If you're blessed enough to have sisters and brothers that are, within the vicinity of the household that can help look after things and, take care of the little things around the house so that the person in the academy doesn't have to worry about the small stuff, is plus. The biggest, for me, the biggest thing was communication of expectations of what's going to be happening. So both people know, ahead of time. So there's no onset sudden frustration or annoyance or, the pressure just is so overwhelming that, you blow a gasket. That's why I said communication is very, very key. Self-assurance, reassurance from the family, letters, pictures from the kids, when you're away from home for that long and you can't see your family, man, I'm telling you, from somebody who's been deployed for 18 months, the littlest things mean a lot. Even if it's just a hand drawing from one of your kids, the little things mean the most to somebody who's away for any length of time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have Breezy Man. There's a couple good questions coming. I'm going to go to Breezy Man. Then I want to go to Gary. Let me just get Breezy Man's question. Hold on one second. It's a question that we're very familiar with. I just it's a 2 point. Well, it's two. Where is it? It was just here. I got to figure out how to mark. There they go. All right. While shadowing units in the facility, I've noticed each unit is ran different with the rules. The incarcerated individuals need to follow. One unit is laid back and others are tightrope. I worry about finding a good medium when I do work in those units. So I'll start first. So Breezy Man, I'm assuming you just started the job. You're gonna, I believe, I'm kind of just I don't mean to keep saying this, but in the rookie book I have coming out soon, I mentioned something very similar to this question. It's also definitely mentioned how to succeed in corrections. But I want you to realize something real quick. When you're watching the behaviors of your officers, the senior officers and the newer officers, I want you to also take note of how much time they have on the job. I want to make sure that when you look to mimic behavior, you understand that some things that senior officers do is really something that you're not going to be able to do on day one, probably not for the first couple of years. And what could look like a very lax unit from the outside could actually be, I know it may sound crazy, but it could be a very experienced officer that just knows how to maneuver and basically just kind of runs the unit through a fair level of expectation. I mean, yes, it's still structured by the rules. Don't get me wrong, but they know the job so much that they don't always go to pen and paper. They just know how to navigate through a fair level of expectations. I respect you, you respect me, and together we get to where we need to be. Now, granted, as a new boot, you're not going to have that right away. So again, it's going to be very simple 101 advice here. But you go in, stretching the rules, learning how to say, stressing the rules, learning how to say no, and setting that level of tolerance so they know that they can't walk all over you. And then eventually you earn that discretion. You basically, once you figure out how to maneuver, how you gain experience, after you gain experience, you start to build on your discretionary. You start to be able to employ discretion as you're able to maneuver. But I just want to make sure that when you see some levels of inconsistency and you say one area is laxed and one area is tight, I get it. But you also have to do what's best for you. So you could take a mixture of both. Ask why. So if you see some officer, what you feel running things lighter, be specific to that officer and say, hey, can I ask you a question? I noticed that you're allowing the inmates to do this. And when I was in Russ's unit, he's not so favorable with it. Can you explain why you do it this way? And then maybe go back to Russ and say, why do you do it this way? So I think Joe mentioned something like this before. Get to know the why. So if you're observing a conflict between practices of one officer and another, then get in the middle and ask why. Why do you do it this way? And then go to the other person, why do you do it that way? Because I think the best way to kind of maneuver through that conflict is get an understanding of why it's being done from that officer's perspective. And I'll tell you something, I've learned this, as I mentioned, sometimes when I see a lax unit, because when it depends on what you consider lax. I mean, you can have an officer who's new, who stresses the rules all day, and as I said, is hardcore with the rules, and then you have an officer in the next unit who kind of understands what to expect from the inmates. They know what to expect from him, and he may be lax on the rules, but doesn't mean he's not as effective. He just has a different way to maneuver. So I think you have to kind of define what you mean by lax, but either way, you get that conflict, you start asking why, and then you kind of build from an understanding of how things operate from the people that you're shadowing. I mean, that's the key. You're shadowing different types of individuals who run things differently. So when you see a difference and you see a conflict, step up and ask why, because it's not about what you do or how you do it, because I can see someone do something. I understand how someone does it because I could see it. And I should understand at some level what we do because that's why I'm in the job. But the intentional effort is asking the why. So if I see Russ and Joe, Russ is easy and Joe is hard, and I'm sitting here like, man, that's two different ways of operating, then the best thing that I can do is go to Joe and ask him why you do it this way, and go to Russ and ask him why you do it this way. And then from that why, my understanding can help develop me into where I need to be. But you're never going to find, it's hard to find people really operating in the exact same fashion. You're always going to develop some level of discretion as you build through experience. I'll go with Russ first. Russ, what's your thoughts on like maybe shadowing and seeing some inconsistency? How do you develop a medium?
Well, see, here's the way I think about it is that, when you see the way, different individuals and, usually it's teams, inside a particular housing unit, and they're working together and they've come to a consensus of what works. And so what you're seeing is you're seeing, personalities, and personalities are different. But you also have to see it from the other end. There's a lot of other personalities in there that may count for much more, which are the inmates. There are different groups of inmates that, are different to deal with on any given day that might deserve a little bit more of I hate the word saying lax, but they might deserve a more relaxed unit, because what's happening is they are actually, hitting on the parts where they are doing what they're supposed to be told. If you notice some other unit where you've got a bunch of officers in there that are having to be hardcore with these guys, is what you're seeing a difference in personality types between the two units of officers? Or are you looking at the difference in the types of inmates that they have in there? So that goes much more to the part that Anthony is talking about, the why. And so part of the why may simply be that, hey, guess what? For a while now, this particular unit has had more than its fair share of knuckleheads, and we're just trying to clean that up. So don't always assume that the personality differences are amongst the officers. Sometimes it's about who you have inside that particular unit.
Yeah, and Russ, you made a very good point about the inmates. Again, I do have it in my upcoming book with the rookies, but I think I have it here. When I was, I think I have it in How to Succeed in Corrections, but I definitely put it in the rookie book. I remember, so when I was admin, well, I am still admin, but when I was at the one facility, I worked at 5 prisons so far. When I first entered as becoming a superintendent, one of the areas that we oversaw was a close custody unit. And, we had 4 big buildings. So these are the inmates that are in restrictive housing, so they're problematic. We would get them from all over the state, and it was the jail within the jail, technically, the ones that were harder to control. You could walk into one unit, and it's noisy as shit, and then you could walk into another unit, which has the same caliber of inmate, and it's quiet, extremely quiet. So I'm like, wow, it's such a difference, because the units are right next to each other. They're right next to each other, so you figure there'd be some feeding on each other's behavior. But what I would notice is this. At first, you would think that the noisy one would be all the young officers, and then the quiet one would be the senior officers. And to some part, that's correct, but that's not the only element here, because I've seen, and this is what matters, when you had the noisy unit, I would notice that some of the officers that would work the unit would always go to the pen and paper to write stuff up, and you're looking at people that these inmates don't follow the rules. So sometimes, unless you got to write it, guys, because there are things you're going to have to write. Let's not minimize that, but not everything. But yes, there are going to be things that you're going to have to write, whether it's a serious offense or a repetitive offense that just you got to start documenting it. But the point is, these people go right to the pen. That would be their backbone. And again, you're dealing with people that can give 2 shits about that. It's like, I'm in here for breaking rules, Gan. Do you think I really give a shit that you're going to give me this charge and that charge? I don't care. But then you would go to another where this guy or this female just has a finesse. They could communicate. Again, it's expectation over rules. They lead through expectation, and the inmates respect them. They respect they respect the officer, and it just seems to be a smoother shift. If they have to write something up, I have seen inmates have said this, man, if that officer wrote you up, then you must have really pissed off that officer. Now, that doesn't mean that officer's lax, because I've seen that officer run a unit. That officer's not lax. That officer runs it in a different fashion. The moment that officer comes on the unit went quiet. It just went quiet. I think that comes with years of experience, but making sure that the experience is headed in the right direction, because that's another thing. Well, because you have experience doesn't mean that, like, okay, I have 10 years on the job. Okay, but what does that really mean? Okay, you have 10 years on the job, but you got people that literally evaluate every experience. They're intentional with their learning, and 2 years is for them is like 10 years of, for others, and they really know how to move that unit through expectation. So again, I think in this case here, I like what Russ said. It may look like it's lax, but there could be a different finesse in how the unit is ran, as opposed to someone who's just always constantly going after the charge. Again, there is some discretion as you start to gain experience as to what you're going to write and what you're not going to write to some extent. I mean, granted, guys, That's why we have this channel here, and the dialogues are always a little bit lengthy, because you always have to take what we say in context. Because if I just gave that tip without context, a lot of people would run with it and say, shit, Gangi said you don't have to write up nothing. It's not what I said. I said there is discretion in how you run your unit. And in some cases, people may run to the charge, the superficial things, or they may just say, hey, Russ, you come out later and sweep this up for me and we'll call it even. You're still establishing some level of authority. Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on that with the inconsistency and finding that medium?
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with Russ. You have different facilities have different dynamics. You got to consider the age of the employees. You got to consider the age of the offenders. What kind of style of unit it is. Obviously you're not going to handle 18 to 23-year-olds the same as you would handle 65 to 82-year-olds. There's different dynamics involved when you're dealing with offenders and your style of leadership and the way you do your job, going to the paper every time is not necessarily the right thing to do. There are times where you're going to have to do it right off the bat. But going between two different facilities, you got to take into consideration the fact that, you have the style of officers that are always pen and paper style. There's no gray area. There's no room to maneuver. It's strictly pen and paper. And then you have the style of officer that has that kind of verbal judo and the verbal communication skills that can achieve compliance, just with a sentence. The biggest thing is to find, I wouldn't necessarily, lean on either one of those styles. Find what works for you. But what I can tell you is that if you are an effective communicator, you can achieve the same compliance from the offender population that you can by using that pen and paper. The pen and paper is not always and I'm not saying you need to look for respect from the offender population, but sometimes that pen and paper will get you a deduction in points, and sometimes will kind of compound your problems, especially if you don't communicate them to the offenders first. My best advice is, as far as that goes, is to find the happy medium that works for you. You don't necessarily have to go to pen and paper all the time, but that doesn't mean you just start walking into a wing and cuss them out either. Sometimes your older, harder convicts, you tend to have to sometimes be a little more verbally aggressive with them, because that's the only kind of style of love that they know. And, that's what they understand the most. And then, you have the offenders that, it's pretty much pen and paper all the time, because they really, in the grand scheme of things, they don't give a shit about what you put on them, what disciplinary sanctions you give them. They came in with nothing, they're going to leave with nothing. So, your best bet is to find you a good happy medium with verbal communication skills. If you can master that and not necessarily lean on why this one's lax and this one's hard, my personal opinion is don't worry about why they're that way. Worry about you and what works for you. Because, if you kind of base yourself off of everybody else around you, you'll never actually find what actually works for you.
Right. And real quick, I want to say prayers go out to Craig W. Gary said today at his facility, a fellow officer got assaulted really bad. They had to medevac him to the trauma center. It's Pendleton Correctional Facility. So let's send our love out to Indiana, Pendleton. I mean, we've had a lot of assaults lately. Sadly, I wish we could get more coverage on this. I'm working on it. I've done a few things on New Nation, but really the stories are it's really about gaining that public interest, because we also lost an officer recently in Georgia too. They were taken from us way too soon. I got stabbed doing an escort. I want to mention something, guys, real quick, kind of related to what Joe was just saying. Sometimes we have a lot of new people that are coming in, the newer classes, not all, but some, that are very literal when you try to give them advice. And it kind of puts us in a bit of a bind, because sometimes when you give somebody advice, it's not meant to be taken literally. It's just kind of like, a little old school jailing. And I think because the old school jailing doesn't translate well literally, we're losing a lot of the core practices. I mean, I remember recently there was a senior officer that, he was trying to train the new boot. And he's telling the new boot, like, when you start to lose some respect in the unit, it's about gaining authority, and sometimes you got to go in there and fuck shit up and all this other stuff. And the new boot kind of took it as, oh, I got to be assaultive and aggressive. And it's not what the officer meant. But we speak the language. We know what he meant. But I watched this dialogue happen between the two officers recently, and I just sat there and I said, wow, we've gotten to a point where we speak two different languages to each other, because it's hard because we may go in and see a simple solution, and then we may try to translate that to a new boot, and it doesn't translate well because we're not speaking the same language. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. It's a very literal workforce coming in. Literally, whatever you say is strictly that's what it is. Whatever you say, that's what it is. Where back in the day, we communicated, throughout certain terminology, we knew exactly what we meant. Even if there wasn't the context, we spoke the language. But here, man, if you don't provide the context and you're not detailed enough, a lot of the stuff that they say or that we say to each other, the senior staff, can come out really aggressive. And I was just thinking of that as Joe was sharing his story. I was thinking of watching the older officer talking to the newer officer, and then the older officer had to constantly explain himself. Just literally like constantly explaining, no, what I meant by that is this. What I meant by that is this. What I meant by that is this. Oh, outstanding dialogue. Stay safe. Oh, thank you, Tommy. I appreciate that, man. I mean, I want to ask you something too, but let me get to Jamie's question first. But I want to ask you about that dialogue thing, but we'll get to that later. That was just me. Joe triggered something in me, and I thought of it. But let's get to Jamie. It's not about me. But you know what? We're going to do a topic on that about the older the dialogue not translating well between older and senior staff, older and younger staff. So Jamie had a good question. Let me get to it, and I'll have Joe go first and Russ. Where are you, Jamie? Where are you, Jamie? I just saw it. There you go. Jamie, why do you think all these assaults on officers is happening? All right, so this is a great question. I know Russ has got some really good input on that, and so does Joe. So let's be fair. And I also want to add one thing. With the use of social media, things are televised more. So I always think we always had assaults, but they're seen more. But with that said, let's just talk about assaults in general. So Joe, let's go with you first. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it's got to do with the young age of the offenders that we have incarcerated now. We have a lot more younger offenders incarcerated, a lot of them being gang members, versus 20 years ago where, that cycle came around where you had pretty much older convicts who were resigned to doing their time, like to keep things quiet, off the radar. Now everything is a challenge. This younger generation that seems to keep hitting the repetitive door of incarceration. There's really no compromise with them, and the majority of them, all they know is violence from the streets. To them, that's an acceptable norm. And just because they're in a penitentiary or a jail setting, they don't deviate from that. I've seen it a lot in the county jails. These guys are, we had 5 that were with us for the last 5 or 6 months, behind a shooting that was televised nationally. CNN and other, it was deemed the prom night shooting here in our county, where a prom night was shot up, by a group of younger individuals that were, gang affiliated from another county. And unfortunately we're in that time frame now that, that's pretty much an acceptable norm. So when they come to the penitentiary setting or they come to the jail setting, that doesn't change for them. They're still in that same mindset. Whereas, us older individuals, we've kind of gotten past all that, and that's just one version. The other version could be, the physical layout of the facility. It could be, short staffing. staff being complacent in their duties, shortcuts being taken. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for the staff assaults, but to me right now, I think it's the time in the generation that we're having to deal with right now. Violence is more rampant and more I don't want to say televised or emphasized, but it's more rampant now than it was 20, 30 years ago. We used to settle our differences, go out in the street, beat the hell out of each other. We shook hands and went on about our business. Now, we got knives, guns, Uzis, AKs, semi-autos. That's how we answer our grievances with each other now. And it's sad that the younger generation has gone to that, but unfortunately, it's just a fact of true life right now.
Yeah, watching trains has got to be a mixture of things. Just a social attitude towards police and jails, thanks to politics, has got to make some people think they can get away with more foolishness. And Jared says, Police Accountability Act. Also, while I agree with most of it, they do take it too far. Inmates know this and exploit it. Inmates don't worry about tickets, but us COs worry about our pension. That is extremely a very powerful statement by Jared as well. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on this, Russ?
I think there is some troubling things about the age that Joe was saying there about these youthful offenders, because they're just dumb and they're stupid and they can't get it through their heads. But I think that's what's happening in some areas, and I can speak especially to what's going on in California. The numbers of our inmates in the prison setting are dropping significantly. I mean, they're going way, way down. Yet on the street level, what's going on is the numbers of serious crimes are going up, up, up. So what that tells you about our population from the jails to the prisons is that there's, a concentration, there's no dilution left. There's no amount of the population that's manageable anymore. So what we have is we have a bunch of unmanageable knuckleheads, and then that's being compounded, I think, very much by the types of district attorneys that we're getting that are unwilling to file charges on these guys for anything. I talked to some officers the other day, specifically a couple of females that were talking about, the gunslinging incidents are just off the charts. Why are district attorneys not prosecuting this? Why are we not focusing on what we can do at that disciplinary level to hold those people accountable? Why are we just, and I've seen it in different units, different facilities, different departments, where some departments, they won't tolerate that kind of thing, but another one, they won't do anything about it at all. And so I think it's destructive, the type of horrible state's attorneys and district attorneys that aren't willing to stick their neck out. And so I think what we need to do is we kind of need to take back our prisons. We need to get in there and either pass some legislation or force district attorneys to file charges when there's an assault, when there's an indecent exposure, when there's, any significant assault, anything on an officer. And the second thing that I think we really have to do is we have to hurt the inmates where it hurts them the most, which is often in the pocketbook. It should be up to the district attorney to automatically file civil suits for officers and, force these guys, to never have canteen if that's what it takes, where every single bit of everything that they have come in is garnished to the max. And I think that if we would do this in a comprehensive way, we could start to see some real results with all of these things. But right now, there's no leadership and there's no courage. And the only courage that's being shown is down at the correctional officer level. So, and I think that deserves more of a conversation too, because there's a number of different offenses that I would like to really see have stiff fines attached to it, gassing or splashing or however your particular state phrases it, that should just be, automatic, 5 years at the minimum. And also, an automatic civil suit that the district attorney has to file for the officer, and whatever the minimum is, $10,000. That guy, if he has to live on soda crackers coming from his canteen and that's all he can afford, too bad.
Yeah, you know what? Again, in here, I wrote a thing about the important versus the urgent. Sometimes the departments, what they do is they sacrifice uh, what's important for the urgent because someone from the outside puts some pressure on it, and then all of a sudden, we start failing at what our core values are, which is safety and security. And the inmates that are coming in now, a lot of them are coming into a system where they're very entitled, so they don't know what it's like to have been in the system, let's say 20 years ago, when staff had a higher level of authority at any time it could be employed. They don't see it that way. When they come in, they see it as they got the one up. We're coming in and we're pretty coming into a system that we're running already. So they don't fear. And yes, I'm going to say the word fear, but I mean it professionally. There has to be, when you work in a prison system, there is some level of accountability. There is. But I don't know if fear is too strong of a word, but I feel it. I feel it that there has to be some level of fear for the consequences that could occur within our professional parameters, which is literally the authority to take what we got to take, whether it's their property, whatever privileges they have, or whether it's putting them in some level of lockdown so they, can't talk to, let's say, their family, or whatever it is that we can take control of some level of their lifestyle. Now, I want to mention something, though. Back in the day, and by the way, these transitions, so I've been in the system for about 21 years. I started seeing it maybe the last, I don't know, 15 maybe. So the first 6, we were kind of transitioning, but you still had some level of control. I remember this for the most part. I remember when there was a concern, and let's say you had a problematic inmate, and the unit's just kind of wacky. You could do, let's say, a cell extraction, and that cell extraction would remind the inmates, and again, a professional cell extraction, guys. I'm not saying we're going crazy hurting people, because that's not the case. But it would showcase a level of authority and remind the inmates of whose house this is. And it would be a tool that wouldn't be employed all the time. It would be employed when needed. And because it wasn't so overused, there was some level of value behind that. And basically, if it got to that point that a cell extraction was used, it was just a mental thing. It reminded the inmates that we're in control, and it was funny because you could walk around a unit, and then when you start seeing the unit a little out of whack and you see the officers being a little bit disenfranchised, sometimes that one inmate, it could be just the wrong moment to do it, that little sign of resistance. You can have an officers and the stuff like, what, we need a cell extraction today. So if any inmate tries to do something foolish today or doesn't comply with staff, like we want to move from point A to point B, we got to get a cell extraction because we're losing control. So cell extractions and some levels of needed use of force were always utilized to showcase authority. Remind the inmates that, hey, remember where you're at. Remember this. Remember where you're at. Now, unfortunately, because there's some level of control that's been lost, these cell extraction, these use of forces aren't really used to showcase authority. They're used to balance things out, regain some balance. I mean, not even to regain some authority. They're just being used to regain balance in an effort to control, as opposed to establish and remind the inmates of where we're at. And that is a different game, because now, as you keep on utilizing it, it doesn't hold the weight anymore like it used to. It doesn't remind the inmates of whose house it is. So I think the problem is when you have the inmates that are coming in with this entitled mindset and they challenge the system a lot more, and they don't know how it was, let's say 20 years ago, we really got no way to really motivate, really get them to be mindful of whose house it really is. So I think the difference about corrections from yesterday and today is yesterday we always had those core values that we could go back to and just remind the inmates that this is where we live. We run this place. And I say that with all levels of professionalism. I want to make sure that this translates well to the people that don't speak my language. I don't mean we beat up inmates. It's not what I said. I mean we take measures to let them know we run this house. Fast forward to today, those measures, if we're even allowed to utilize them, is really just to maintain control. But we've used them so much, it's softened. It's softened. It's softened. It doesn't establish authority anymore. It's just us catching up. That's what it is. So I think, honestly, when it comes to running the facilities now, we're constantly always going to be behind the eight ball. And I just want to, did I explain that right? Russ, I want to get your thoughts on. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like how, Russ, back in the day when you ran your stuff, you knew that when you did a cell extraction, part of the cell extraction was also a reminder to reestablish authority. You know, we got this, let the inmates know, and then you reestablish that authority. But now, with what we have now, it's like we're just always just trying to keep a balance. It's not even a showcase authority. It's more of, you know, shit, we're behind the eight ball and let's just try to catch up.
Yeah, now we tend to be letting things get to too much of an emergent state. We're, you know, barely in control. We're never ahead of the curve. We're always behind the curve. And a lot of that, you know, comes, you know, simply from, you know, everything from not having enough staffing, to not having enough training, to not having the right equipment, to not having the right backing. Today, it seems like so many, you know, managers and administrators, they can be, you know, fearful to pull the trigger on things. And then when that happens is more control is ceded and you lose it. And then, you know, people are trying to catch up. And then what starts to happen is then you start to, unfortunately, have officers that tend to try and justify what it is that they did if they were out of pocket. And the thing about that is there's no way to ever justify that. And not that it's so bad, it's just that there's no way that we can run the prisons. There's no way that we can run the jails based on that. We should be given back the type of responsibility and the type of authority where there can be significant consequences and still stay within the bounds of, you know, law and the Constitution of everything else without having to be scared of losing your job or scared of losing your life for that matter. And so what we really truly need is, you know, we need leadership, you know, at certainly at the state level, and better yet, if we could get it at the national level. But, you know, things are just out of hand, and it makes it very difficult for the line staff to operate within the lines.
And you know what, Russ? I want to lean on something that you just said. Because we've fallen back so far in regards to how entitled we have kind of given the inmates this level of entitlement, even if we decide to kind of start balancing it out, it's going to be extremely rough. And a lot of people from the outside are not going to understand that. And what they're going to think is, yeah, it's aggressive. Yeah, guys, because we fall back so much that we have to fight just to get back to normal. I mean, I'm not lying to you, but it's true. You know, you got to prepare that this is a war, not a simple battle. And again, I don't like using these aggressive terms because I don't want it to be translated that it's fighting all the time. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is there's a level of entitlement that has now been passed over to the population that we have to make sure it gets to staff. We have to make sure that the inmates know that staff are the ones that run the show. But we've been having this entitlement for so long that when we decide to finally move in the right direction, it is going to be a serious battle. And for the people that have decided we have to do this, rough it out with us. Because we got to go, we're going to be at it for a while. We're going to get complaints. We're going to get the lawyers. But if you can trust in us, and it's going to be a little long because remember, we've been, you know, they've been able to get whatever they wanted for so long that even if you make an effort to take away something small, they're fighting for it. You know, the smallest of things, you know, they're fighting for. So you got to stay committed to what we want to accomplish. And no matter what pressure comes your way, from the outside, remember the end game. The end game is to accomplish this. Don't say you're going to accomplish it, and the moment you get some outside pressure, you fold. No, hey, whoa, we were just starting to do it. Now that looks, and that's the other thing. So you get the okay that, hey, we're getting ready to bring some level of control back into the prisons. So let's go ahead and empower staff to do what they got to do. And the moment staff does it, the first complaint goes out there, everybody folds back, and the inmates are reinforced with entitlement. It's just, the effort the other way goes so much quicker because they got the momentum. So we got to first, here's what we got to do, guys. You got to stop the momentum first, which takes a while because they're going a lot faster than we are. So we have to kind of catch up. And then we got to kind of get them and stop them and then pull them into our direction. The problem is it's catching up to them and stopping them. That's a battle. And that's a battle that causes a lot of people to get scared, but you got to trust in the professionals to do the job because once you give us that empowerment, we'll get it back to where it needs to be in a professional manner. But right now, they're all the way down there, and we're constantly chasing it. And every tool that we use, like Russ said, I mean, really, it doesn't even balance out. It just, it's funny. It's for our survival now. That's what it is. It's for our survival. Got a couple more questions. So hold on.
Okay.
Oh, you got something, Russ? Go ahead, Russ. I'm going to look at some of the questions. Let me see. Hold on. Let's see. Well, yeah, there are two types of use of forces, planned and spontaneous. You're talking about, always planned use of force, 100%. That's what I mean. When I'm not, obviously, use of force that's needed in the moment, you got to do what you got to do. I'm talking about a use of force that could be planned, like a cell extraction or, maybe an inmate refusing to comply. Let me see. Hold on. This Jared says a good thing too. He goes, Anthony, even in a disruptive time, search should be activated more as a tool of force and control. Now it's just a team with fancy patches that come in class training or COVID positive transports. I've actually heard that before, sadly. But Joe, let me ask you a question, and maybe Russ will answer too. I mean, Joe, do you think the times have kind of went in the other direction that even if it does come our way, I mean, we still have to do a lot of battling just to kind of even things out?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I'll put things into perspective. A lot of one of the biggest reasons that I chose to retire when I did was the fact that even our wardens that were coming in at a younger age, I was considered I was told I was considered barbaric. Whatever they meant by that. But I was the type of lieutenant that I wasn't afraid of the outside pressures. I did, as long as things were being done within the confines of policy and procedure, I had no problem doing a cell extraction. I had no problems having the use of force. I had no problems backing my officer. I think a lot of the times now have shifted because we have so much outside pressure and advocacy groups. Congressmen are getting involved, state reps are getting involved, and everybody's caving to that pressure. But the one thing I can tell you is that my officers always felt supported. I didn't care if I had to stay 4 hours after a shift to do use of force paperwork. The convicts were going to do what I told them to do when the fuck I told them to do it, and they knew that. It's not so much now because they have kind of leaned all the prison systems to be a more kinder, gentler, tolerable, all the things that we used to take away from them, magazines, pictures, TV privileges. Now we're giving them tablets, we're giving them Spotify, we're giving them, Netflix, we're, direct TVs in the prison systems now. I mean, the times have changed with technology. I think technology has kind of ruined us to a certain point. I think my personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, doesn't reflect anybody or any agency, but I wholeheartedly think that because the support factor is not there for correctional officers from their supervision and from their administration, because of the fact of the outside political pressures and everything that's going on. We've seen it coming for years. We took away solitary status. There's no more punitive solitary status. They took that away. That was one of our best tools for chronic rule violators. They've changed the use of force plan. It's now called the behavior intervention plan. We've made things so kindler and gentler that, I think a lot of the officers don't honestly feel like they have the support of their agency. I'm not going to say not so much their supervision and administration, but I feel that they don't have the support of their agency. Therefore, they tend to call in. They don't want to come to work. They just quit because, why should I show up and, walk into an area where, 25 guys are smoking K2 and my unit doesn't do anything about it except say, open the windows and let it air out. They'll be okay. They'll sleep it off. There's no support structure there for them. And I think that's got a lot to do with our nationwide staffing issues because of the fact the laws have changed. We've made things more kinder and gentler and more tolerable in their issues, where before, it was either you do what I tell you to do or there's going to be consequences, period. You're either going to come out of that cell or I'm going to send 5 guys in there and we're going to force you to the floor. We're going to handcuff you. We're going to leg iron you, and we're going to carry you to the cell one way or the other. You had 2 options. You could have left that cell walking on your own 2 feet like a man, or we're going to carry you. I'm just going to say it straight out. We're going to carry you like a hoe. But either way, I'm going to gain my compliance one way or the other. And a lot of that has gone away. I guess that's why I'm considered barbaric. It is what it is. I'm good with that. Give me the granite and the chisel. I'm good with that.
Joe, it's spot on because again, it's we're not aggressive individuals. We're not. I don't want people to think that anyone here is a tough guy because at the end of the day, I'm not looking to fight. I'm looking for compliance. But
absolutely, it's not like I didn't go. I didn't go looking for these things. I don't go purposely looking to be barbaric.
Yeah, it's right. It's just.
But
it's
when the option is presented. And it comes to a point where we're at a crossroads where you're saying you're not gonna comply with this order that my boss gave you, or that my sergeant gave you, or that I gave you. Then we have a problem. But either way, I'm going to achieve my compliance.
Yeah, it's basically it gives us that higher level of authority that's needed to run it. And for the people that make the changes that are from the outside, I think before they're implemented, they should put on a uniform and try to implement them. And also the verbiage, I know Joe said solitary. We don't really have solitary. They made that verbiage so it could get people to be afraid of utilizing it. But having said that, first off, they're never put away in some area in the dark. That's a bunch of crap. But when you have inmates that are a threat, what are you supposed to do with them? You got to take them away from the population because they can hurt others, and the same people that defend the rights of the one inmate, will always defend the rights of the people they hurt too. It's like you can't win because if you treat the inmate unfairly, or they believe you do, and you separate from the population, they fight for the person's individualized rights. But if you leave him in GP and he hurts somebody, that same group of lawyers will represent the individuals that got hurt, and they'll say, well, we're at fault. So we're at fault for putting the person in an isolated cell for the time being so they can cool down. So we're at fault for isolating them. But then we're at fault if we don't isolate them and they attack somebody else. So it's like, okay, so since we're at fault at both extremes, so you give me what you would want to do. Greetings from Sacramento. You tell me what you want to do. So the person that wants to make the change, you go ahead and run the unit, and then you implement that. I want to get to a question. I'll go with Russ first.
Wait, can I just say something real quick about Joe there?
Yeah.
Joe, the barbarian, is kinder in his approach than all of the politicians and all of the administrators that just want hands off on everything. And I say that by virtue of the fact that, inmates in a well-regulated facility are much more happier, less likely to get hurt, and actually have a genuine chance at making a difference in their lives through the reentry and rehabilitation process. In the other scenario where there is no Joe the Barbarian, the chances of successfully rehabilitating those people is a lot less. So who's kinder, Joe the Barbarian or all of these, wannabe, do-gooder politicians? Tell me.
Absolutely.
You're right. Now, guys, I want to ask a question that came from Gary, I believe. So, Gary asked a question about inmate suicides and basically how they could affect staff. Actually, again, guys, I'm promoting the hell out of this. I have a part in this book here, How to See the Questions, about staff are affected by inmate suicides, and a lot of people may not think that's the case because we're so cold and barbaric, but that's not the case. We are affected by them. There is a human being who has killed themselves, probably right in front of you. And that alone could have its effect, let alone do I still have a job the next day? This was my responsibility. I failed to do my job. And then the question is, after an inmate suicide, there could be some level of PTSD, especially if, and this is where it's messed up. Now, remember, guys, remember this. We can't always go in immediately and stop a suicide attempt or self-injurious behavior. Maybe that's the right term. Because there's procedures in play for safety and security. So some of us will be screaming at the cell door, telling the person not to do it, but they're still going to do it. And now you're watching this person kill themselves right in front of you, and you can't go in until the response team comes in to make sure it's safe enough for us to take the inmate out, that it's not a ploy or a red herring. So, there's a lot that goes into a suicide attempt and a lot that the officer, that staff member has to deal with before they're able to respond. And PTSD could easily come from someone just having to watch this person hurt themselves, waiting for the response team to come so they can go in and save the individual who's committing themselves. And guys, they can be inventive. It's not always hanging themselves. I mean, it could be finding a weapon and slitting their throat, or jumping off the top of the bunk and landing head first. I mean, they're just, remember, least restrictions, the more innovative people become, and having to watch that happen and to say that it doesn't take a toll, it's going to. And I like his question because the key here is to admit that it could get to you, and then you're on the right path to kind of correct it. But, the one question is here is, because you go through PTSD, how long should the department allow you some level of leave before you may be forced to come back? So I'll go with Russ first, Russ, but I'm sure there are some people that, feel a certain way after an inmate dies, especially right in front of them. And, I think it could affect them mentally. And, how does management know when it's time to start? First off, they might even give somebody leave, unfortunately, for that. Sadly, yeah. I think, right, Russ, they may not give people leave for that.
Yeah, they may not. I don't know necessarily that that leave is even the right answer for that. But what I can say is that people are going to react differently to these kinds of situations, and we should be very sensitive to that and try and find out what the right thing to do is. I think that it should be incumbent upon administration to have all of the people involved have a sit down with some type of mental health professional and decide where they're at with it. And I know you mentioned leave, but maybe it's possible to let them decompress in a lower level setting. I don't want to say tower, because I know everyone's going to say, well, in a tower you got a gun and all this, but maybe there's a setting that they could function in for a little while to decompress from some of that, PTSD trauma. I think that, it would behoove the institution, to have that mental health professional just say, hey, look, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. If there is an issue, we're here to help. We're going to stay in this. Is there anything that you do need to discuss? And, get some feedback so that there's a way to decide what to do if an officer is having an issue. Because I will tell you that for the most part, especially I believe with the male officers, that they are a lot less likely to be forthcoming and be honest about if it has bothered them or not. And so I think that the contact can't be from the officer to the mental health professional. The mental health professional has to be the one to reach out, and it has to be mandatory, and it has to be, from the facility ordering it to be done.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to add on that because there have always been talks, because in order to enter this profession, you got to pass the psych exam. But when you're in the profession and you see the worst of the worst, there's no recurring psych visits or mandatory psych visits, because you're right, Russ. Most people aren't going to want to go there because, one, they don't want to show they're vulnerable, or they don't trust management, whatever it is. And I think there should be some level of having some mandatory after a couple of years, revisiting our psych and communicating, because, again, I mean, you're visiting a psych before you get in the profession, but then as you're in the profession, it's going to take a toll on you. And I think there should be some mandatory meetings. I know that a lot of facilities have critical incident stress management teams. They may come for a staff death, a staff assault, a major incident, but most won't come for a suicide or an inmate suicide. So having said that, and they may not think, well, maybe it's not needed. Well, it is. It's just people may not admit that it's needed because, again, there's that stigma. Like, and it's mostly from our own peers who are going to be like, yo, what the hell you acting out for? It's just a fucking inmate. It's like, yeah, but you may think that, but again, it's still a human life. It affected me. So having said that, I think when you know that there's a concern in someone expressing that level of vulnerability, then you step up and provide it and then see if, it comes. I went a couple of years ago. I was part of a critical incident stress management team. And basically what they did was we sat down, made a presence at the facility when there was a concern, and then we would wait for people to come to us. And there was an issue one time, made the public paper, that was a big concern. And when you got to the facility, you knew that staff was going to be affected. But when you came to your area, no one's coming to you. They're not coming to you. So at one point we decided, you know what, maybe we walk around. Maybe this isn't about us, waiting for them, but maybe we should go to them. And then you realize the difference in how people respond to the assistance. So if you do have a response team and they're intentional with going to people and shooting the shit, not being aggressive, but just, taking the temperature a little bit, you'll find that you'll be pretty successful with that intentionality behind it. But if you're sitting there, especially in this profession, waiting for people to come to you, that may not be your best bet, because you're not going to get the people that really are affected. And Russ, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you a little story about that. You're very much spot on with regards to that. I'll never forget, a guy that I grew up with and went to school with. We weren't necessarily like real close or anything, but, I considered him to be a friend and stuff. And we worked at the same institution, and he was killed by a drunk driver, Officer Kevin Aubrey. And, I will never forget, just the feeling of despondency that I had with regard to that. And, I was just sitting out there in my tower, and lo and behold, I hear a knock down there at the door, and I look down, and, Officer Paul was showing up. I said, what do you want? And he says, well, we're coming around to check on everyone because of what happened to Kevin. And I said, well, you know what? I'd like to talk about that. And so, I led him up into the tower, and it was something that I guarantee you I would have never done on my own. I would never reach out on my own like that. But at that moment in time, I was caught in a position where I really felt like, hey, you know what? I need to talk to someone about this. And so, reaching out is far more powerful than waiting for someone to come to you.
Yeah, and Russ, and let's get Joe started. I want to mention, sometimes the biggest concern with staff not reaching out for help is not really management's initiative. Even though a lot of people may say, yeah, I don't trust management, I don't trust their attempt, But the point is there's something there. So whatever it is, we're providing you with something. We could figure out all the rest later, but we're providing you with something. I think the biggest obstacle behind it all is the peers who may make fun of the individual or make the person may seem that they're weak, because I've had the other end where it's not about management, but when you really start to talk to these officers, some of the officers will come out and say, to be honest with you, Gangi, the suicide did get to me, but I didn't want to say nothing because at the end of the day, it's just an inmate. Now, that's not coming from management. I hope not. I mean, nothing's 100%, but I think a lot of that could come from the people that's around the individual, probably laughing and joking as the person's going through this mental breakdown, or what's even worse, the person not allowing his real emotions or her real emotions to get through, and they start laughing with them, and then they get home and they're just all over the place mentally. Joe, what's your thoughts on this, Joe?
When it comes to inmate suicides, a supervisor will be able to gauge his staff and see how the reaction is, what the reaction is. Did they, respond appropriately? Did they freeze up? Are they, visibly emotionally upset about it? I think it starts with the supervisor first. Here in Texas, we have the employee assistance program. You don't automatically get leave just because you witnessed a suicide. That's just something they don't do here. But we also have crisis response and, intervention teams that come for critical incidents, employee deaths, inmate deaths, hostage, riot, whatever, serious assaults, things of that nature. And I found that individuals that were actually affected by an incident don't necessarily want to talk to somebody they know on their shift or within their supervisory chain, because they don't want to be deemed weak. I also found that they really don't want to speak with anybody from the employee assistance program either, because this is somebody they don't know, and they don't want to show their vulnerabilities or be deemed weak or not appropriate, not fit for duty. I can tell you without, a fraction of a doubt, one of the things that I've seen that was the most successful, and, is the chaplaincy program within the state. The last two facilities I worked on, we had two of the best chaplains, Jerry Sheffield and Kenneth Attaway, two of the best chaplains. These guys had a way of being able to communicate with the staff in a non-judgmental factor that allowed them to vent their frustrations, vent their concerns, vent their worries, vent their vulnerabilities, and still redeem some self-value in the way they felt about the incident, and still be able to maintain a professional appearance as a correctional officer. I found that to work the best. These guys, and I can tell you, I've had employee deaths on duty. We've had inmate suicides, and, part of our communication chain and notification chain is, of course, notifying the chaplaincy. It's just kind of automatic, because these guys were so good at what they did, and they were so good with counseling with the employees, one-on-one or either in a group faction, that they had better outcomes than any employee assistance program or anything out there. If there was a legitimate concern, the chaplain would say, hey, this one may need a day or two off just to kind of process and thin things out. When it comes to an inmate suicide, it's not an easy thing to see, especially when it happens right in front of you, but it's something that we have to deal with. Do I feel that putting them on a non-contact post for 6 weeks is the right answer? No, because you're giving them more time to process it. You're giving them more time to kind of relive that image over and over and over. I think the best way is to speak with somebody immediately, get it out, get it off your chest, and get back on the horse. You know, we still have a job to do. You know, unfortunately, inmate suicides are an ugly factor of our everyday business. It's going to happen. You know, I personally have taken the employee deaths more personal than the inmate deaths. And I can't describe why. I can't even define why. But, you know, I knew that witnessing something, you still have a job to do. You still have to lead them. You still have to teach them. You still have to be there for them. But, you know, as far as, you know, processing, is there a right way to process it? I really don't think so. I can just tell you that I found that the chaplaincy program, if your facility has a good chaplain, to me, that's worth its weight in gold. Because I'm telling you, these guys can get better results out of the employees, because it's somebody that they see on a daily basis, somebody they feel comfortable talking to, because they know they're chaplains and they're non-judgmental. They're not there to judge. They're not saying, you know, hey, suck it up, Buttercup. You're just being weak. Get back on the horse. You know, I just found that the chaplaincy program worked better for us than any kind of employee assistance program ever could.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that what we want to get, what the message that we want to get out here is that it's okay if it affects you. What's not okay is if you ignore it. And as for the process, well, yes, even Gala says my department, LE chaplaincy, were phenomenal with the sworn staff. I was an ambassador with them at the jail. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, these are trained professionals. You could talk to them in a confidential manner. And I really do think that the biggest concern here with this part is people wanting to express that vulnerability. I think that's something that we could do as peers more than management could ever do. I think that when we're working along with somebody, they've gone through something. I think let's say Joe just witnessed a suicide or even an attempt, and I see Joe's affected, I think it's me as Joe's peer taking him aside, say, hey, you need help. Let me, what you went through is crazy. Let me just, you know, and you need that, you know, because I just feel it's not automatic for us to want to admit it, because you're just afraid of that person in the background that's laughing at you or saying you're too soft. And I want to add something too. I don't know, and again, nothing's ever 100%. But as corrections has evolved, there is a softer side to management that's also surfacing, where you want healthy staff. So you have to have a caring approach with your staff, balanced with candor, of course, but you have to have a caring approach with your staff, which means that there is a level of vulnerability on both sides, you know, even on management. You know, we're not perfect either. So I think it gets to the point where, you know, some people may still feel we're old school and that we don't want to know. And it's like, yeah, but you're not even giving us the opportunity to help you address it. That's why I think at this point, in order to build trust and credibility, you got to kind of know as management, just send it out there. Just send it out there. If they take it, they take it, because again, there's still that lack of trust, and you got to build credibility and you got to build momentum in that right direction. So I would just provide it until people start trusting in the effort. There is another good question. Oh, Grace said, I'm very excited. I found out about the channel today. Morale is at an all-time low. Hearing these topics discussed and engaging in the chat is valuable. Oh, thank you. That makes my day. I'm actually part of the morale committee for the state, and you know, that's actually something that matters. What you just said, Greg, you know, you gave me good morale, so I appreciate that. There's a good question here. This is Russ Joe. It's from a LinkedIn user, Anthony. So of course, whoever wrote this loves Russ the most, then Joe, and then I'm a fucking afterthought. But either way, Russ, Joe, at least I got the exclamation point. That would have really hurt if it was a period. Russ, Joe, Anthony, what are the activities you do on your time off to maintain your mental health? I want to mention one thing before we go into Joe and Russ. We'll do Joe first and Russ. We'll alternate the order. But I'm exploring something right now, and I think it's going to be in the rookie book that's published. I think I already wrote it. I got to remember if I did or not. So many passages. And again, that's a smaller book, but very precise. We work on this thing where it's boundaries and this light switch. And for a while, I kind of leaned into that theory a little bit, noting that it is impossible to kind of kind of keep on switching the light on and off, that, there's got to be some level of going home and expressing your concerns to a loved one, and, trusting. And I'm like, I don't have to share the gory details, but I can tell you how certain things make me feel, because you know me. You know me, you know what affects me. This is more than me wearing the uniform. This is me. But I also learned something recently. I was watching a video on leadership, and it really didn't apply to this, but I think it could be utilized. When the person was talking about work and home and the balance, he didn't say boundaries. He said barriers. And then when he expressed his thought even further, what he said was, this is your home life, because he was more focused about the home life. You're not accepting boundaries. You're putting barriers. This isn't coming in, and that helps with that intentionality of protecting, whatever side you don't want to bleed into the other. So I'm working on something with the barriers. It's just something I thought was a great thought. But I think when it comes to your mental health, you want to create activities and things that keep you busy, that help you with that escape. Because you do need an escape, guys. You do. I mean, you do. When your day's done, your day has to be done. But part of your day being fully done is if there's any concerns that you should have a way to vent it. Someone that you could trust to communicate with, so you could complete that day and not have to worry about something surprising you later on. As for me, the activities I commit to, obviously there's family. So, the moment I'm home, I do try to be 100% with my family. I mean, most of the time, my thoughts are usually on a project I want to complete, or a show I may want to do with Russ or Joe, or whoever, because I like to kind of keep topics in my mind, but I enjoy it. It's not to the point where it overwhelms me. I just love thinking of a topic, charting it down, and then working with these gentlemen here, the audience here, and just perfecting it with the long dialogue. I had someone come up and say, Gangi, the discussions are too long. Keep it short. It's like, me and Russ discussed this a while ago, Joe, Connie as well. Guys, a tip with no context is foolish. I've watched videos that do 5 tips, and, a rookie will take a tip one way, a senior officer will take a tip another way. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to provide a tip and give my level of expertise, I'm going to exhaust every perspective related to that tip so people understand the meaning. And I learned that because someone put a video up a while back about just going into a day room and shutting off televisions or whatever it is when they got loud. Now, I would never recommend that, but maybe for a senior officer, I would never recommend it. I think it's a foolish thing, but maybe if a senior officer does it, that's going to be a lot different than a rookie doing it. And I said, hey, when we work on these videos, guys, we can't just do tips. You got to provide context and dialogue. So again, I'm very devoted to this channel. This is an escape for me. But for me, it's family. It's, doing what they want to do, even sitting down playing some video games or VR with my daughter. I love the Quest, the VR with the no wires. I already ordered the Quest 3. Me and my daughter go into these virtual realities and we escape. And, she tells me her day. I tell her mine to some extent. And for me, it's got to be, I know it's cliche, but it's got to be family and then playing some video games with my. We're excited to get Mario Wonder that comes out in October. So I think I'm actually more excited than she is. But that's my escape. And what about yours, Russ or Joe? Whoever wants to go first. Russ, want to go first? Or
I'll go. Anyway, I am. Well, maybe it's not obvious. I am retired now. But, I still go down and I work at jail every single day, not in the capacity of a correctional officer or deputy, though. But what I have found is that, you have to have balance. I am very much the type of person that my personality is very much wrapped up in what I did as an officer and what I do now. And so from the professional viewpoint, it's very important for me to unplug, because I naturally do not want to do that. But what I have found is that, having a lot of different good outside activities helps me be much more effective at what I do. Fortunately, I'm blessed with a most wonderful wife, and we do almost all of our activities together. starting with we are workout fiends, and we work out sometimes between 4 and 6 times per week, and sometimes that involves doing things like, I think tomorrow we might be going on a 6 or 7 mile hike. We get out there and we do paddle boarding. And then besides just doing paddle boarding, like I said, we do the hikes with the dog, we do the paddle boarding, we do the working out. And back in August, I did a Tough Mudder event, which was, what was it? It was 10 miles and 25 obstacles. And it took all year to prepare for that. This coming weekend, I'm going to be up in northern Nevada, getting something off of my bucket list, which is viewing the Ring of Fire eclipse. And so that's going to be awesome. I'm going to do some photography on that. I've got my GoPros all set up and ready to go. I have my lovely dog who goes everywhere with us. And I think it's just important to, be experiential in your life and find a variety of things to do. And I'm blessed enough that I do that all the time with my wife and my dog. And, I just have a blast. And I think it's a matter of, you have to fit a lot of good things into your life. And one of the things that I tell my participants, because now I'm a do-gooder, making sure that they have a chance to, have rehabilitation and reentry, is that it's not enough to just, be clean and sober. It has to be about, you have to live a life that's worth living. And, some of them have a hard time understanding that. But, it's what I do. It's what we do. And, we're coming up on 11 years of marriage this month, and it's just been fantastic.
And by the way, if Russ does have, let's say by any chance he does have a bad day at home, around Christmas time, he sneaks back to San Quentin, does self searches, and drops all the contraband underneath the Christmas tree for all the officers to sit and open up and enjoy. hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on how do you? That's a good question. I don't know if we ever asked Joe. Joe, what do you do?
Well, my kids are grown and gone, both in the service, so I don't have any kids at the house. I like to play with nostalgic things like reel reels, and when I'm not doing that, I don't know if you can see it, I'm taking long rides on that sexy beast right there.
Oh my God.
Otherwise, I'm a ham radio operator, amateur radio operator, so I like to get on there and talk to people all over the world and conversate and have fun and reach out and talk to new destinations, and something that I thoroughly enjoy.
I'll tell you something, Joe. I don't think we've ever asked you. So that's pretty good. I didn't know that you do all that stuff. I don't think we've ever asked you before.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time too during hurricane and major disasters. We'll turn on the amateur radio, and we'll pass messages to and from other stations from the affected areas to family members to kind of let them know they're okay. We can actually connect our ham radios to telephone lines and actually let them have a conversation through the ham radio over a telephone line with them, just so they can hear their voice and things of that nature too. So it's a lot of fun. It's something I enjoy. It keeps me grounded, especially when you're talking to people, different accents and things all over the world. Up until probably about 2 days ago, it's been too damn hot to do anything here, so I'm not hiking shit. And as far as fitness, I'm fitting this whole pizza in my mouth, so that's about as far as my fitness level goes.
I'm going to tell you something, guys. As I said, even for me, I mentioned I kind of like the writing. I think it gives me a chance to. It's very therapeutic. Gives me a chance to express thoughts that I could be going through, and I think that's also sort of what the YouTube channel does for me too. I think it does it for all of us. I mean, we may have something on our mind, and it gives us a chance just to express it out. I've learned. I think that was James Ferrara that asked that question, because he's texting me.
Somebody just texted me. It said.
It's James Ferrara. We got to get him back on, guys.
Yeah. We gotta have Butch back on here.
Yeah, somebody just sent me the text, says, Russ, Joe, Anthony, what activities do you want to maintain your mental health?
It's James. It must have been his question.
And then it said
Yeah.
he saved you for last. And I put laughing my ass off. I said, yeah, we felt sorry for him, so we put the short person to the front.
Guys, what's funny as I've developed Chair Talk, whatever, and we've been over a decade now, and as I look back at the videos that we've covered and the books that we've written, I mean, it really is, I think, through the discussions we've had here and the lessons learned through just like going through an experience and being able to share it with everyone and discovering all those different perspectives to see where do you, where are you with whatever this concern is. I want to mention something too in the rookie book I have that'll come out soon. I mentioned about keeping a journal. That's one of the regrets I have. I think I got to get Russ's thoughts on this too, real quick, and actually Joe too. Let me explain something. So, looking back over my career, I only have 21 years. I'll be completed of 21 December. When I started wanting to write books and whatever it is, or doing the channel, I started kind of writing some thoughts down of what I went through the day. But man, if people are doing that the moment they get into this profession, and then by the time they leave, they have like a collected journals of everything that happened, you may have something that is worthy of sharing to the world because you're going to document your changes and everything. And I wish when I started this career, I just wish I would have jotted, I don't know, a paragraph a day, 5 sentences a day at the end of the day to just say, this is what I thought, this is what I went through. And then it would be great. This would be great, guys, is maybe 21 years later or whatever, to go back to that original journal of when I was a rookie to see how much I've grown. And I know there's some rookies here, so listen to this. When I'm writing the rookie book, one of the things I wrote was, I'm writing these passages. Again, it's a smaller book, but it's meant to complement this book, so you're going to have to get the other one as well. But my wife comes up to me and she goes, what's the purpose of writing a book? Because it does take into some family time. Like I wrote the rookie book, about 32,000 words. I wrote it in about 20 or 30 days. I sped through it. With the help of everybody who helped me. Russ helped me, Joe helped me. I mean, everybody helps me put some thoughts together. But it's hard because you got to come up with the topics. That's where it's challenging. But I remember doing this and, trying to come up with the thoughts and trying to put things together. And my wife says, what's the purpose of you doing this? And I said, well, the purpose is that these are things I wish I would have learned as a rookie, again, with the experience I have now and looking back. And then my wife said something that's so key. She said, yeah, but how do you know you would have even understood it if you were a rookie? So you got 21 years experience and you want to go ahead and teach a rookie something that, how do you expect them to know that, or even understand that? And then I was like, holy shit. So of course my mind keeps going. And I said, well, that's why we got our training officers. So you do this book for rookies, you look back on your experience, things you wish you knew, and then the training officers translate the lessons, because again, you're right. How do I expect someone that doesn't have my experience to understand a lesson that took me 21 years to learn? It could be in some extent like, the person's on addition and I'm trying to teach them, multiplication. But guys, if you could start writing your journal now, and if you could start, seeing that transformation, even going back, looking at 5 years, it's just amazing how much growth that even passively, that you go through every day that you don't realize until one day you're looking back and you're like, man, I can't believe I wrote that back then. And, and this is what I think now. And with the corrections ever changing, it's just kind of good to see how you're changing or evolving. I like to use the word evolving in the process. Friendly Talker says, mad respect to all of you dealing with very dangerous men in conditions that are worsening. I listen to this fascinating channel at all times as the true crime buff. Well, Friendly Talker, if you have a question, ask us. I'm going to give us any question you want. You know what? We'll give you a little crime story right now. Russ had an interaction with the Midnight Stalker. Am I right, Russ? Can we share that? For Friendly Talker?
I've had lots, but he, gosh, man, when I think about it, So Richard Ramirez was on one of the tiers that I worked at San Quentin, and a buddy of mine had asked him, man, I don't even know if I like putting this out there, but anyway, had asked him why he had cut the eyes out of one of his victims, and his response was just, "Well, she just had really pretty eyes," and that just really tells you what the level of depravity of some of the people that I worked with was, and there's lots of things out there that happened like that, because the nature of the inmates that we tended to when I was at San Quentin, they were by and large, true killers. I think we had 500 and something when I was there on death row, and now death row has all been let out. There is no more death row for the most part, because we've become a kinder, gentler California. And I know a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about the politics of it, but we have a horrible governor who's very much invested in growing crime rather than protecting the public from it. And I know that that's just my own view, but when you see what California has become, I live in a very, very small town here in Northern California. And the difference between the way it is now and the way it was 4 or 5 years ago, it's unbelievable. We didn't have the fentanyl problem. We didn't have the methamphetamine problem. We didn't have the homeless problem. And now we have all of those things right outside my door. So
yeah, when I retire, I've interacted with a lot of famous ones as well, like Russ. I worked in maximum security prison as an associate administrator, but I don't want to share it just yet until I'm retired. I try to limit a little bit, because I don't want to, I don't speak for the department. I speak on my own, so I don't want to kind of, get in trouble. But I have dealt with a few famous ones, a few people that you recently would see on Netflix. Hey, Russ, Eileen wants to know if you could recap your career timeline.
My career timeline, yeah, sure. So anyway, I started the department back in 1989. I think it was August the 6th, if I recall correctly. And anyway, went through the academy, started immediately after the academy, which back then was 6 weeks. We were the last ones to get our heads shaved. Ended up going to San Quentin. Did what I do? I did 7 years at San Quentin. And then due to my father becoming ill with cancer, I moved to a closer prison that was still part of CDCR, which was Sierra SCC. And then I promoted at SCC to sergeant after I'd done a grand total of, I think it was 17 years. And then I finished out my career in I finished out my career in 2013 as a sergeant, but then I went immediately back for 2 more years as an officer. And the reason I did that was to make extra pay and to also put on basically it was a 2-year how to interdict contraband kind of thing. I just put on a show for 2 years. I took in that short 2 years, I took 55 weapons off of the 2 yards that we had there. Just kind of, putting on a master class in contraband interdiction. And then I finally totally retired for good. And then that lasted for just a little bit. And my home county was for the first time going to build a dedicated juvenile facility. And so they needed someone who was adept at the security part. And so I went back to work for the juvenile detention center for 2 years. And then after that, I ended up just kind of back and forth across the country to Pennsylvania for a while. And then we finally ended up coming back to California. And I got a job then with a private company that does reentry and rehabilitation work. And it's kind of the sunset of my career, perhaps, and that I just turned 60. And so that part of it has actually been really a godsend for me. I think I understand corrections and the criminal mindset and the rehabilitation mindset maybe better than a lot of people do, because I've had to chase this from a different perspective. I'm not naturally a do-gooder, but I do think that I do good for some of those people. I think I'm instrumental in helping them. And it's just kind of, made me balance. I really believe in the concept that corrections is public safety because, we keep the wolves behind the walls. I think that the big picture part of it is some of those wolves can be reformed. Most of them can't be. And so that's what I do with my time now on the professional side. And then I just talked a little while ago, of course, about what I do in my off hours now. So if there's anything else, I'll go into anything.
Yeah, and by the way, Eileen, when you're still within the state system, so same thing. I've been at 5 prisons, but you're still working for the same agency. So, like for Russ, when he did those initial movements from officer to sergeant, and then the different facilities, except for later on, before he retired from his original career, he was still always under the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So he would have remained in their same pension. Same thing for us. We may go to different facilities, but they're all under the umbrella of the one agency. So you get to keep your pension, and then for us it'll be 25 and out. So I have 4 more years left, and obviously the same would be for Joe, who also recently retired a few years back and just got himself back into the mix again as well. I don't know if you can share it, but he's working for a county facility now, right?
Yep, working for a county facility, working on a second pension from them after working for TDC for 30 years. So I wasn't going to go back and double dip into that. It wasn't, worth the effort.
Yeah.
All you're going to get is a paycheck. So the county was hiring, said, "Hey, we got a spot. We'd love to have you. You can get a second pension." And yeah, I mean, it's just awesome.
Yeah, for me, so I got 4 more years left. I don't know. I'm 1 step away from being a warden, but I don't know I don't know if it's my goal right now. But I do know that when I retire, I want to continue to do conferences, focus more on some more books. I want to do, conferences, more books. My big goal would be to be I do TV stuff. So I just did News Nation, but I would love to maybe sign as a contributor to a network, and then maybe provide an inside look into the prison system, but show you things that you aren't seeing, which is the work being done behind the wall. I would love to kind of be like, what's his name? Diners, Dive-Ins, and Dash. But instead of going to restaurants, you go to different facilities and you highlight certain areas that they're doing that most people may not know. I would love to show you some programs that we have going on all across the country. Just kind of show you different things that are done, and maybe even have some personal stories. Like, you meet an officer who did something courageous or whatever it is. There's so many stories that we have in this profession that I would love to share. So maybe in the near future, I can connect to a network and then, be able to go ahead and, share a good inside view of the correctional system, but from things that people don't normally see, which is the positive interaction that happens between our staff and the inmate population. Because a lot of people don't know, but there's more positive interactions than negative. And the cool thing about it all, because of Tier Talk, is I have a list of resources that cover every gamut of corrections. So whatever we need to talk about, we could bring them on and give them some airtime, and just really give people a glimpse of the true work being done behind the wall. And then it's no longer, there's no longer confusion. But the reason why that's really hard to do, guys, is because people don't want the truth to get out there. Listen, we're not a perfect system. Eileen, Graycroft, we all know that. We're not a perfect system, but what system really is? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to take the negative actions of some idiot and then use that as a way to generalize the system, which happens to us all the time. Let's say Joe goes corrupt and does something foolish. Well, that's the whole criminal justice system. No, it's fucking Joe. hold Joe accountable and separate the system from it. And that's what I would like to do. Let's say, and I'm just using Joe as an example, but he's one of the most straight up people you ever meet. But let me just use Joe for this example. Let's say Joe makes a bad choice, whatever it is, right? Then we can come back on the air with 10 episodes to remind people of the good that happens in this profession, so we can finally get ahead and not allow these negative stories to run rampant and define the good that and I'm sorry, to define the work that's being done in this profession, because I know there's good work. You know, the guy said Joe is my first choice to get corrupted. Good call.
Joe
Damn,
is a barbarian.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be my goal. And guys, I'm going to tell you something, guys, just so you know, I've been offered a lot of TV programs, A&E, everything, and me and Russ were involved in one, and it's just the bad luck. I mean, we were rolling deep right before COVID, and we were getting ready to. We were filming. We were A&E, and we had our own little show, and fucking COVID and the death of the that individual. Was it Floyd? Was it Floyd? And the network didn't want to invest anymore because it became controversial. And then the gentleman that ran the project connected me to someone else because he wanted to see us succeed. And that project buckled because, you know, this perspective could be controversial. And then I got another call recently, whatever, maybe for A&E, I forget what network it was for, and then that buckled. So, you know, it just gets frustrating. So I'd rather just do things, if I ever could, maybe when I retire, I could get my own filming stuff and then just kind of film my own things. And then, because right now, guys, you could film things and upload it to like Amazon Prime and all this other stuff. And I know I can get the access to the facilities. And one more thing, you want to hear something funny? It is funny. So when I first wanted to start doing this, really get active and really start getting into the facilities and filming things, I came in wanting to film the positive. And I said, hey, guys, I know there's good stuff that happens behind this wall. I can get a camera in there because I did have a connection. It was one company that was willing to work with me that we were getting ready to do this idea that I had, kind of like this diners, dive-in, and dash thing. And I said, I want to showcase the good. I want to showcase some programs you have and all this other stuff. So granted, I want to show the good about this profession. I'm going to a county jail because usually the jails have a little bit more leeway in getting you in and videoing some things as opposed to the prison. I guess freehold, a little bit easier, right? I'm getting shut down, and I'm trying to promote the good, right? Literally the good. Hey, you got a good program there for mothers. You got a good program there for job opportunities, vocational training, whatever it is. I'm getting shut down left and right. But then 60 days in opens, which tears down the system, but they let them fucking into every jail. I mean, talk about politics. I can't go in and promote something good, but then you can get someone to come in and bastardize the system, and they get access to, and then you get these sheriffs like, yeah, I just want to clean up the system. And well, let me get this last thought. This is what gets to me. I'm going to bring these camera crews in so we can make an effort to clean up the system. So you watch this show 60 days in, which is edited and whatever the hell it is, just very corrupted in its manner of how it's shown on TV. And then you watch this show for whatever, 12 episodes, 12 weeks, whatever it is. And at the very end, this is what they get. Oh, yeah, we discovered that contraband was coming through food service. Yeah, simple 101 bullshit. 12 weeks. Come on. Wes, what were you going to say? I apologize. I was
going to say that does not mean that we are not open to angel investors if anybody out there knows any.
Yeah, that would be the key, guys. I mean, that
would be the key, man.
That would be the key. If we could get that off the ground.
I am buying a lottery ticket tomorrow or next week. So there is that.
So that is, and by the way, that's the good thing. If Russ won the lottery, Russ would help invest after he does his Tough Mudder, because I know for damn well millions of dollars is going to Tough Mudder first. Russ,
if he does, he's got to. If he does, he's got to do it bald. He's going to have to do it naked. He's going to have to do it bald and naked and afraid.
Oh no! I don't think people could stand that.
Before we come to an end, I thought I can ask everyone here a personal question, and then we can kind of sign off because been a little over 2 hours. And we'll try to do another live one later in the week. And again, if you guys like this stuff, please share it. I'd love to get more attention here because we'll help people even from the outside looking in. We'll help people that have family incarcerated. We'll give them good advice. We'll give them the right advice. We'll give them advice on how to work with the system as opposed to circumventing it because we know it from every angle. But I'm going to ask a question just to get some humanity here. And again, we touched on vulnerability and it's okay to be human. I'll start with Joe first and Russ. Were you ever scared when working in this profession? Was there ever a moment where you were truly scared and wondered, like, why the hell did I even get into this profession? So Joe will go first and Russ, if that's okay, or whoever.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, absolutely. I was absolutely, my first 3 weeks, I'd be the first one to admit that there was things that terrified the shit out of me. My third week, it was my second week in, when I watched my first inmate homicide. Two guys getting in a fight from rival gangs on the rec yard. One had a shank and he stabbed the other one in the gut, ripped him open, threw his intestines into the Israeli wire on the West rec yard. So yeah, absolutely. There were times I was freaking terrified. And it's okay to be scared because it's a fear of the unknown. It's things that you're not normal. Everybody sees violence on TV. Everybody sees violence, on the news, and, it's not the same violence as when you witness it. It's a whole different thing. And yes, it terrifies you. It scares the shit out of you because, the hell, it could have been you. But when I first came in the system, there were things that terrified me, walking through central control and hearing that door shut and hearing the echo down the hallway or hearing a crash gate shut. They were just two of the loudest noises that, took forever for me to get used to, especially coming out of the military. Because, every time you hear a gunshot, it's just like somebody, when you fire a shot, you always kind of wince a little bit. And then after a while, you don't wince anymore. And it was kind of the same thing for me coming into the prison system. But, as the years rolled on, I can tell you they were some of the best years of my life. I enjoyed being able to grow in that profession. I was blessed with the fact that I was able to promote up to lieutenant in that profession. And I loved being able to share my knowledge, my wisdom, my experiences with the people coming up and coming in, and watching them grow. They were some of the best years of my life. But yeah, if anybody walks into a penitentiary says they weren't scared or were never scared, yeah, that's an individual I'd be worried about.
And what about you, Russ?
I'll tell you straight up that there was many times where I've been scared. There was, everything from, having hits put out on me, to just being in, physical confrontations. I think the one that really hit home for me was San Quentin, West Block Yard. And I was just talking to an inmate from a distance away. And I had an inmate come up on my left.
Hey, Russ, we lost you, Russ. You're muted. I'm losing your sound. I can't hear you no more. Can you hear him, Joe?
Nope. His earbuds might have died.
Hey, maybe your earbuds died?
He's in Charlie Chaplin mode.
I hope he's not going to lose his phone. It's not going to die, is it, Russ? Can't hear him.
Them damn California Apple products.
Hey, Russ, you want to come back in? I can tell my story while you come back in. I'll wait for you to come back in. I can't hear you, Russ. He's going to come back in. Okay. I want to finish my thing, too. So I had mine where I was walking in a min unit. I was a sergeant walking in on an overnight unit. It's a min unit, and we were a little further out from the main facility. And Russ, can we hear you? You there? I still can't hear you, Russ. You may have to disconnect the Bluetooth on the phone. I don't know if you're running on a Bluetooth. But I remember, guys, I was walking the dorms, going around. Now, mind you, the facility I was at is a little further away than the main. So it was me, two other officers, And then if there was a code or something, the response probably wouldn't be able to be there for about 7 minutes. And you had about 100 and something inmates. And I want to mention something, guys. It's never you versus 100 and something inmates. It's usually a selected few, but that's all you need. So all because I may say it's me and two other officers, and we're in a unit of let's say I think it was like 120 inmates. Doesn't mean we're going to have an issue with all 120 inmates, but it doesn't have to be 120 inmates. It could be just a few. And as I'm doing my rounds, the rule of thumb is when you do your rounds, I think I can hear you now, Russ. You there?
Yeah.
I can hear you. All right.
Okay.
So when you're doing your rounds, I'm almost done mine. When you're doing your rounds, rule of thumb is no one goes off their bed. This is late night. This is overnight. You don't get off your bed. When I go past, if you got to use the bathroom, it is what it is. But you don't go off your bed. So what happened was, hold on, my one earpiece just fell out. What's going on, guys? Having all these technical difficulties. So what happened was, as I'm doing the rounds, I get to this blind spot, which is, it's hard to explain, but the dorms kind of went like a U. So you kind of just circle around. But there's a blind spot in the back end of the U. So, where it goes from like a roundabout sort of, but you're not in a cell. You're not in a tier. You're just walking around a dorm. And I heard feet jump off the bed, which was unusual for me because they know you're not supposed to go off the bed. So now I'm in the back and the person's coming my way and I'm going right for my radio because I don't know what's happening. And the guy literally comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Gant, I saw you from behind the wall. I just want to tell you I'm getting ready to go home soon." I was like, "Whoa, like, are you insane? Like I don't know you. Like I may have interactions with you behind the wall, but I don't really know you." And it's the way he came at me. And he was happy as hell, but I want people to know that because the environment can be so tense, I mean, literally, you always, in the back of our mind, we're always waiting for something to happen. That even though he came with a good gesture, the environment is so tense that anything out of the normal is like a ticking time bomb. And for me, and I know it sounds superficial because I've seen stuff too, guys. I've trust me, in 5 years, I've worked in mostly maximum security prisons. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff as well, but that's the one moment. That I felt it got me because I didn't know what was coming my way. I had trapped myself into a corner. Oh, and then wait, hold on. There is one more. I worked at maximum. I just thought about it. When I was working at a maximum security facility, I was think of the roundabout. I went to go do my rounds, and then there's a roundabout, and then you kind of go into the other side and lock the gate, and then walk up the rest of the tier. The officer didn't know I was down there. And it's an old-fashioned jail. He popped the release, and then I'm standing behind it. I'm right on at the gate at the back end, and all the inmates come up. They never even saw me. They went out like this because it's a very thin tier, and they turned away and walked forward because they're so conditioned. And they left, and I'm sitting there like, holy shit. 40 of them all got out, and they just kind of like very routine, this way and out. And I'm right behind them like, holy crap. Yeah, that was another moment. Hey, Russ, what's yours?
Okay,
Yeah.
So the part that I was at is the West Block Yard at San Quentin, and I was talking to an inmate. He was a few feet away. Another inmate came up from my side, and before I could ward him off, because I'm always very conscientious about keeping that tactical distance, right? He instantly rushed me, right? And as he rushed me, he just took a real good swing at my head and face, managed to scratch up the cornea on my eye really good and stuff. But what I did manage to do is I did manage to, get my arm up and tuck his arm hard underneath mine. And I managed to spin him around and I clotheslined him pretty good. And so right at that point there, I started expecting that I was gonna get some help. And there's probably about 300 to 400 inmates on this yard. And I brought him back up, over my hip. And as I finished the clothesline and down into the ground, I knew that I had, probably jostled him really good at least. And then I realized, a few seconds later that, he was starting to, be able to fight back. And I'm still wondering, what is going on? Why am I not getting any help? And it was only later that I found out that I'd been abandoned on the yard by the bubble gun officer, and that he was inside talking to people, up and down the tier. And I was out there by myself, and I was completely unaware that this condition had happened. And so in that moment, it was one of those times in my life where I knew that this was the fight that counted. This was the one that if I didn't win it, I could potentially lose my life. I was also really worried about other inmates getting involved. I was really fortunate that this guy was a nutcase, but he had, nutcase strength, which was bad. And the other part of it was, though, at least because he was a nutcase, he wasn't affiliated with any of the, the gangs that we had at that moment on the yard. And so that was sobering. It was scary. And but it was, just one of many scary things, that I've, gone through over the years. But that one, very sobering when you realize that this is the fight that I have to win.
Yeah, you guys, before we go, we keep on mentioning the slamming of the gate. So in the book that I have for rookies, one of the chapters I have is that still gets me every time. And it says, when the gate shuts behind you, locking you into the prison, or when you hear the emergency bell sound off signaling for immediate assistance, it can be quite overwhelming. From the loud bang of the gate slamming shut, like JoJo mentioned too, she dealt with that, securing you in, or the alarming ring of the bell that seems to slow down time as you run towards the unknown. The physical environment of a prison or jail can be very unsettling, even nerve-wracking. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but I want to read something at the end of this passage. Right here, I say, when I was a rookie, I felt as if the above overwhelming experience was just part of the job, and that any nerves or uneasiness related to them needed to be pushed all the way down and forgotten, as if there was no room for fear or nerves and corrections. It's funny, I don't recall, at least from an official capacity, anyone ever teaching me that. That lesson may have been something I developed on my own through my subjective interpretation of the hard, impenetrable shell of an exterior correctional officer must possess. That you can't showcase only vulnerability. If you do, you'll be seen as weak. But then as I move forward in this profession, as I matured, I began to see the importance of being authentic. I realized it's never healthy to push down how you feel and then expect to be effective. To be honest, you just become a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Plus, to keep us balanced, some level of controlled fear or some level of uncomfortableness is needed to keep us from getting too comfortable, too complacent. And the final thought is, in short, an honest feeling towards an overwhelming experience, when able, should be expressed outwardly and never denied internally. It was also been my experience that you are never the only one feeling the way you feel. Therefore, have courage in expressing your feelings, your concerns, and with support in your efforts to move forward, turn a vulnerability into a strength, even if that means just having the courage to acknowledge it. Eventually, as time passes, the strength behind being vulnerable is never about avoiding what you feel, but rather embracing it. And that kind of touches into this. I'm telling you, man, that book is. I'm happy. I can't wait for that one to get out. I think it answers a lot of questions that we don't even know we need to know. Hey, Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? You're muted, Joe.
Damn non-Apple products from Texas. Yeah, I mean,
Joe, you're not muted now.
This profession is probably one of the best professions to be in. It's probably one of the most thankless professions to be in. But I'm telling you, it's a profession that you can pretty much make your own destiny with. It's all about how you approach it, how you take it in, and what you do with it. It's basically your ball. You can do anything that you want to do within this profession. There's so much possibility as far as promotional and lateral positions that you can go to. I mean, there's not anything that you can do if you don't put your mind to it. It's all in how you grasp it and how you run with it. From the academy on, I'm telling you, I wouldn't trade any of my experiences or any of my leadership skills or any kind of influences or impacts that I have with other people and that I've made for other people for anything in the world. And that's what I like about this channel. This channel is all about views. It's about my view. It's about Russ's view. It's about Anthony's view. It's about your view. Everybody has experiences. Everybody has something they can contribute to this, and that's what makes this channel so damn, awesome to be a part of. And this is probably one of the best outlets that the correctional professions can have, versus any organization out there. What you do with your time in the corrections profession is solely on you. You basically make it what you want to. But just make sure that you're safe when you're doing it. If you decide to step up into a leadership role, just remember, as a leader or supervisor, it's no longer about you. It's about those below you. And just be safe in what you do. And we're always here. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. My email's floating out there. Anthony's is floating out there. We're always open to questions. It doesn't matter when or how.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate the kind words. All right, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing, sir?
Just, hey, guys, gals, just be aware, this is a great profession. I mean, I really like the fact that, the people that we have on here on Tier Talk are not just experts, but they're enthusiastic experts. We are always here. We make ourselves far more available than, your average podcaster or your average so-called social media influencer. The reason that I'm in this at all is because I remember the hard times when I started out, and I wanted to make things easier. And so I wanted to take some of the success that I've had and pass it on to you guys. And, maybe you guys will be able to, shortcut some things that I wasn't able to.
And guys, and by the way, Russ, always honored to have you on. I real quick, this will be my final thought. We talked about creating a journal. So there was a person here that was thinking about doing this. That's a rookie. Yeah, Jojo, we've discussed that a lot of times too, about saying no. That's the first thing that, we're challenged on immediately, is our ability to say no. I want to read something real quick about, maybe this will help someone motivate them into creating a journal. So the quote before this passage comes from Lieutenant Matt Schultz. And he says, the benefit of keeping a journal are what I would describe as a career impacting, course correcting mechanism. Journaling the journey this career path takes you down will keep you grounded. Within the walls of any institution is the devil's playground. When we subject ourselves to this environment day in and day out, it can and will rip you apart from the inside out if you allow it. Keep a journal to let the bad things out and release it from your mind. Keep a journal to document the good so you remember why you chose this career. Again, this quote's in my my book to come, but I thought that was spot on what he said. Basically, I love this. Keep a journal to document the good so you remember when you chose this career. Guys, one day maybe there'll be a chance to elevate a platform like this. I know YouTube doesn't always share it, but even if it's just an intimate audience like this, it's really not about the amount of people watching it, but just kind of spending, some time with some good people, shooting the shit, learning so much about, what it is that we do. But also, I think in what we provide, there's life lessons, because we are dealing with human beings, so there's a lot of lessons that we've learned from behind the wall that don't just apply to behind the wall, but also apply to, the everyday real world. So, to be able to share some of that knowledge in the hopes that what we learned can help you go through whatever it is that you may be going through. It's pretty cool, because a lot of people that follow us now don't always work in corrections. They just have a curiosity about the inside. So I think that's pretty cool to have you guys, come down and check it out. It means more to me than you'll ever know, because I think you guys may be the first time that actually are willing to listen to the sources that work the profession, as opposed to running to the media. So if you guys ever have any questions about this profession, please, you got your resources here. Email us, gangianthony@yahoo.com, and we are responsive. We will answer back. Everyone that gets to us, we will answer back. And if on the other side, if there are people that are locked up and family wants to know how to help them through this, I would also hit us up, because we know the system and we'll teach you what the right thing to do. We won't teach you to circumvent. We'll teach you the right thing to do. And I think that's key, because we know how to work with the system, because we believe the system works. And that means it has a solution for almost any problem. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.